We're going to talk about ratios again. Remember, two ratios set equal to each other is called a proportion. No decimals allowed. Ratios must have the same units in both numerator and denominator. So what we're going to go into is reviewing means and extremes and what might happen if you have two proportions. When you cross multiply, you get x squared. So this is kind of a review video on the quadratics and quadratic formula. So if you have ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is not 0, you want to use the quadratic formula to solve for x, or you can factor. Here I'm going to do quadratic formula. So if you have x squared, set it equal to 0. Quadratic formula always works to get your solution. So here's an example. I have a quadratic, I know, because I have x squared. It's already in standard form. Remember, standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So I have a, b, c. So a is 7, b is 6, c is -1. Quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and that is what x equals. Again, you should know this formula from your Algebra 1 class and or Algebra 2. Geometry, I'm not going to show you how to arrive at the quadratic formula. So now you just substitute. So x equals negative b, which is -6, plus or minus the square root 6 squared minus 4a, c is -1, all over 2, 7. Now it's just using order of operations. So -6 plus or minus. So we have 6 squared minus 4. A is 7 and C is -1, and you get 64 all over 14. So which brings us down to -6 plus or minus 64. Square root of 64 is 8 all over 14, which means you have -6 plus 8 over 14 and -6 minus 8 all over 14. So when you evaluate -6 plus 8 all over 14, it equals 2 over 14, which is 1/7 equals x, and -6 and -8 is -1. Or -14, so it's -14 over 14, which is -1. So those are your two solutions using quadratic formula. Those are the exact answers. In geometry, we're going to use exact, so you're going to have, if you don't have a perfect square in your radical, you're going to keep it and do simplest radical form. So there's our review on quadratic formula. Remember, in geometry, you always want to check to make sure that your solutions, when you plug them back in for x, you get a positive distance. So you may not use both of these in geometry. More than likely, you're going to use the x equals 1/7 because it's positive. You probably wouldn't use the -1 because you'd get a negative distance. If you have any questions, send me an email, and I'd be glad to discuss anything else.